Time for the John Combest Top 3.
And they say that with that European accent. Not Combest, but Combest. Combest. And here he is, the guy who does the top 3 every morning when we start up the show. It's John Combest. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Brad. How are you?
Boy, it's a beautiful. Have you been outside so far yet this morning?
I have not stepped outside yet, but I was quite disappointed. I canceled some evening activities last night, Brad, in anticipation of a horrific hailstorm, and changed a lot of logistics around, and then looked out the window and it got sunny last night.
Well, I know. Yesterday afternoon it looked like the storms were going to hit, and we're going to have all sorts of crazy high winds and, storm activity. I think they were even talking about possibility of severe thunderstorms. And that was like for a couple hours, and then the sun came out and it was a beautiful afternoon. It was sort of weird. Okay, hold on a minute. John, I think I'm allergic to you because I don't cough until I get on the air with you. Isn't that weird? Something
Boy,
weird.
is that the first time I've heard that, Brad.
Okay.
However, we can all agree that I have nothing communicable.
That's what she said. Okay. Okay. A couple things to throw out before we get into the top 3, and sometimes I forget about doing things. Remind me of my visit to Klondike Park yesterday.
Oh, you know what, Brad? I have a pen and I'm writing it down right now. And are you gonna call John Lamping? And he can admonish you for the need to stop publicizing Klondike Park. He just wants to walk his dog, Brad. Leave him alone.
So far, what I've done has not helped because, well, I'll tell the story later.
Okay, no spoilers.
Right, no spoilers. And also, the Dylan Mulvaney versus Matt Walsh battle. You know about this crazy thing?
I haven't seen a battle with Matt Walsh, but maybe Dylan Mulvaney, maybe we might talk about him in the first segment, Brad.
Yeah, I got a feeling that that's on your top 3, right?
I don't know. You got to wait, Brad. You got to wait till – is Casey down the hall, or is he still trying to steal some of your caffeinated soda, Brad?
Let me see where he's at.
Now on with the countdown.
He's ready. He's ready to go.
In third place,
Dylan Mulvaney, the transgender activist and Bud Light star, is making an appearance at St. Louis University. Yes, our city's esteemed Jesuit university, Brad. Dylan Mulvaney is being hosted by something called the Great Issues Committee, which has been around for decades. And they're having him come in and I guess give an inspirational talk about life as a cross-dresser, the controversy he went through as being a sort of a figurehead, Brad, for the woke movement a little more than a year ago. And as you can imagine, there's plenty of folks who are not happy about this, Brad.
Who would that
now,
be, John?
Has Matt Walsh weighed in on anything specifically here, or is it Dylan Mulvaney in general?
No, the story is that Matt Walsh was disinvited, as I understand it, to also be a speaker at St. Louis University.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and I know that the SLU College Republicans are quoted in the Post-Dispatch today talking about how they wanted to have a woman sports advocate, someone who goes out there and points out that, hey, we should only have women competing against women in women's sports, and that the university told the SLU College Republicans that the security costs for having a conservative like that would just be too much, Brad. However, having Dylan Mulvaney, that's A-OK.
John, can I stop you for a minute?
Sure.
Isn't that amazing what they're saying? They're essentially saying, I mean, let's I don't mean to get into your top 3, but you brought up an interesting point, okay? And do you mind if I just amplify on this for a second?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Dylan Mulvaney comes, and they're not worried about security, which means the conservatives aren't the crazy the nutbags that show up and cause problems, and like the Antifa people show up in their black hooded things and with bear spray and stuff like that. But when the conservative have somebody and the protesters are the liberal nutbags, they're worried about security. What does that tell you? You know what I mean?
It tells you a lot. And anybody yesterday, I saw a video that Kyle Rittenhouse, the proud American vigilante, I saw a video that Kyle Rittenhouse posted when he's leaving a university, and he just had his phone out when he's going to the car, I guess giving him a ride to the airport. And Antifa is out there, and they're, and Brad, you can imagine the kind of shoes that these young women are wearing, and they're giving him the middle finger, and they're using naughty words. And can you imagine a group of conservatives being violent or yelling or throwing things or being that vulgar, Brad?
John, hold on a minute. What did you say? What kind of shoes were they wearing?
They were wait, hold on. Were they stiff? No, were they No, they weren't sexy. Oh, I know what they were, Brad. They were comfortable shoes.
Jarcone best, he's a man of taste. He's got a thing for a certain type of grace. He don't care about diamonds or pearls. All he wants is a girl with comfortable shoes.
So why weren't you there, John? That's the question. If it's your target audience with all the women with comfortable shoes, why weren't you there with Kyle Rittenhouse? Where was he? He wasn't here. He was someplace else.
No, he was in another state.
Okay.
So what's unique though is that SLU has been in a few of these controversies over the last few years, and SLU, Brad, is one of those institutions that if you look at the administration, appears to be more liberal than most people would expect. You would expect a Jesuit institution would have some semblance of either even-handedness or even leaning a little bit right. But you look at the students there was a sit-in within the last several years, and they were race agitators were mad about some statue on campus, and as it turns out, the students who were protesting at the statue weren't even SLU students. They were just urbanites looking to make some trouble. So who knows? But the Dylan Mulvaney thing, and this is a good reminder too, that we wouldn't have a Dylan Mulvaney controversy if it wasn't for decisions made by Anheuser-Busch. So you can't really be mad at Dylan Mulvaney, because if you're Dylan Mulvaney and your entire currency is attention, you're going to go wherever you can. You're going to promote yourself, whatever. But remember, Budweiser started this, Brad.
Well,
we wouldn't be talking about this if a Budweiser executive hadn't decided it was a good idea to put Dylan Mulvaney on a commemorative can.
Now, can I amplify one more time on that whole story?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. The interesting thing about that is that lady who has the very German name, who was put in charge of the AB branding, hold on a minute, specifically the Bud Light branding. She was, and I think part of as you remember the whole crazy story, part of the thing that stirred the pot was she did a podcast after that and essentially said she was given the job to blow up the brand. That's my words, not hers, but essentially sort of re-steer the brand because it had become old, and the commercials where I think her term was, didn't she say like frat boy commercials?
Frat boy, yeah, it was frat boy humor, Brad.
Frat boy humor, which quite honestly I appreciate, but maybe that's because I'm an old dude. But she's like disappeared off the planet. I mean, how come nobody's tracking her down? And I'm not saying like track her down to like harass her,
or give her a hard
essentially
time,
just track her down and say, okay, you've probably pulled off one of the most bizarre marketing screw-ups in corporate America in the last, wouldn't you say, like 20, 30 years, if you look at...
Yeah, it was significant. And, I was listening to the call that I listened to daily. A guy named Daniel Biolsi from Hedgeye was talking a little bit about Budweiser, Brad. And the amazing residual effects of this type of stuff. Constellation brands, they sell Modelo, which is now the top-selling beer in the United States.
Which is bizarre.
Usurped Bud Light. Right. Molson Coors. Brad, these competitor brands that have been trying to beat Budweiser for years both report a big increase in shelf space, Brad. Nothing else over decades has given them shelf space until last April. And now they dominate in shelf space.
And let's be honest, for decades, Anheuser-Busch was the 800-pound gorilla in the beer industry. I mean, what if they said jump, the retailers and everybody else would ask how high on the way up. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah,
because
absolutely. And like Biolsi, so this is a guy that analyzes beer sales, Brad, like it's what he does for a living. And he says, quote, "The market will realize that much of the share loss is permanent and not a multi-year tailwind." So a lot of the loss that Bud Light has, Brad, is permanent. That market is gone. They've tried other beers. They're going to stick with other beers now.
Well, from a marketing standpoint, all these other companies threw millions and probably cumulatively billions of dollars at marketing and promotion and things like that to try to get the market share from Anheuser-Busch. And Anheuser-Busch takes the gun, pulls the hammer back, points it at their foot, pulls the trigger, and shoots themselves right in the foot. And what do you think they paid Dylan Mulvaney? What, $20,000, $30,000, something like that?
Less than that, Brad. And then the lose-lose in this for Budweiser is, if you read the Post-Dispatch story, and as usual, I have a paywall-free link up on my website today, you see that Dylan Mulvaney is now trashing Budweiser, Brad. Have you seen his criticism of Budweiser?
Because they didn't support him. And I'm going
because they didn't stand behind him. So if you're Budweiser, sorry to interrupt, but if you're Budweiser, not only do you lose billions in sales and make career-ending mistakes, but the group that you were hoping to placate, that you were hoping to get in a little niche market of the transgenders, now the guy that you gave a can to says to all of his fan girls or fan boys or fan non-binaries, hey, don't buy Budweiser. They sold me down the river.
Well, the analogy there would be, and I don't mean to use this as a disrespectful thing to Boeing, but the analogy there to Boeing would be like, let's say one of their whistleblower engineers, we just had another one came out, who's trashing Boeing and saying the 787s are unsafe, and him expecting Boeing to give him a promotion. Or like, let's use the NPR example, what's his name? Uri Berlinger?
Berliner. Yep.
The guy who wrote the hit piece on NPR, because he's only worked there for 25 years, and if anybody knows the lay of the land at APR, it'd be him. He can't quite understand why they gave him 5 days with no pay. You know what I mean? Why would they do something like that to him? Okay, we've dwelled too much on this. We done with this? Ready for number 2?
I'm ready.
Up a notch to number 2.
The curtain has fallen on the Dean Plocher drama, and now the reviews begin. So the Missouri Independent, who's been central to pushing the anti-Dean Plocher narrative, has a piece up today about what an obstructionist and what a delayer Dean Plocher has been. The Post-Dispatch and the Kansas City Star are clearly pretty sore about the fact that Democrats on the committee voted to absolve Dean Plocher in this vote. The most important thing to watch, though, is go to Scott Fawn's midweek update. He has about 45 minutes where he goes through the behind-the-scenes maneuvers, machinations, whatever you want to call it, Brad, of what really happened in the committee hearing. And what Scott points out, which isn't a surprise to folks who've heard us talk about this before, is that the committee was determined to find something. And Brad, whether it's Donald Trump in those cases we've talked about here, or whether it's Missouri Democrat Wiley Price, who went through the same thing 2 years ago, a committee's determined to find something. And very rarely do you have a committee come out and say, yep, we found nothing. And in this case, you actually have Democrats on the committee that say, look, Dean Plocher did not obstruct justice. Dean Plocher did not sell his office for some software contract. You know, he made mistakes with his campaign finance report, and he paid him back. So more fallout from this. Everybody should go and watch Scott's recap. Scott describes it as a clown show. And Brad, here's one piece of information I didn't know until I Googled it. You know that circus theme, the dun 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 dun?
Yes.
What is the name of that song?
I have no idea. What is it?
It's called Entry of the Gladiators.
Yeah, interesting.
I know. But Scott played it throughout the show because Scott would talk about some clownish behavior of either the committee chairwoman or others, or, you know, liberal blogs or whoever, and then he would play the clown theme, which I thought was pretty funny. It was also, Brad, the theme song of WWE wrestler Doink, a.k.a. Maniac Matt Bourne. Did you know that?
Doink, D-O-I-N-K.
Yeah, Doink the Clown. And then after, when the gimmick like really reached its apex, at WrestleMania they brought out Doink had a little midget helper, and his name was Dink. Now, you can't say midget anymore, I'm sure.
I was just going to say, you're using terms that you can no longer say anymore. Okay, moving along.
The number 1
fundraising fallout, Brad. Number of stories today from the Kansas City Star, the Post-Dispatch, the Missouri Independent blog, doing a recap of the April 15th quarterly campaign finance numbers. So we see, interestingly, Brad, for a lot of our listeners and folks in the St. Charles County area and even Franklin County, a couple races have been highlighted. Ann Wagner is sitting on a ton of cash. Ray Hartmann, who entered the race late, has virtually no money. I don't expect that Ray Hartmann will actually raise any money. I don't think he'll raise any money at all. But Ann Wagner has close to $3 million on hand, Brad.
You know,
Bob Onder has outraised his competitor, Kurt Schaefer, in the 3rd Congressional District primary. Now, to be fair, Kurt Schaefer entered the race really late and really hasn't ginned up his fundraising machine, and I assume he'll have a lot of money. Also, Brad, the most interesting campaign finance piece, I think, is that Wesley Bell is sitting on almost twice as much money as Cori Bush in that first district primary. Would you have expected that, Brad?
Well, surely because of the fact that Cori Bush has to spend all that money on security. I mean, she's got to pay her now husband. I think he's making, what, $2-3 million a year for security, stuff like that?
Well, interestingly, the Post-Dispatch piece, which is by I think Joe Holloman wrote this one. Let me scroll up. Yeah. And her husband, Courtney Merritt's III, remains on the payroll after all this controversy, Brad, but he's only getting $5,000 a month now.
Only $5,000 a month.
Only $5,000 a month. Now, the other surprising thing is, and I had to double check this here, Brad, because I thought this couldn't be right, because it says that her committee has $92,000 in debts. I had to double check it because it's very rare for a black woman to spend money that she doesn't have. So I double checked that. And about $78,000 of that debt is owed to law firms in New York and Washington. So surprisingly, Cori Bush has some money trouble and some money headaches. So maybe she doesn't manage her money well. But Wesley Bell has doubled her up in cash on hand, Brad. And this is going to be a doozy. It's going to be a competitive race.
Okay, why would a congressional or congressman, a U.S. congressperson, owe 5 digits to law firms? Why? Explain that one to me. You're the political guy. Why would that be?
Now, you're being serious or sarcastic?
No. I mean, why would she have?
Because the campaign. Because Brad, you know how you've dealt with attorneys and talked to attorneys that handle very specific FCC regulations and title changes and things like that.
Right, they're very expensive.
In the campaign finance realm, those attorneys who do that on a federal level, the legal fees for that are outrageous. So I can't imagine if she went to a law firm that actually does this full time and that were real experts in this and said, look, my books are a mess. I'm under a lot of public scrutiny. I made a lot of mistakes. Can somebody come in here and tell me what I can do? I'm surprised. I don't know how much she spent in total, but again, she has $92,000 that are unpaid. So I don't know how much she's already paid to these law firms to fix her reports or give her counsel.
Is that a normal line item expense for most people who are in Congress?
No.
I was going to say, I mean, if you keep your nose clean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying. Now, even on the Missouri level, there are folks who do compliance and folks who go through with a proverbial fine-tooth comb, Brad, and will reconcile differences down to a penny. But those are experts that are integrated into your campaign early on. And the Cori Bush stuff is my presumption here, Brad, is that it's for cleaning stuff up. It's for cleaning up past reports.
Okay, was it you that told the story or somebody else? Maybe it was a meeting I was in where somebody refiled their Missouri MEC stuff because they were off by like 10 cents or something like that?
It was a penny, yeah. I believe it was Sam Page's county executive campaign. It was either Sam Page's PAC or his campaign. Yeah, I believe they refiled because they were off by a penny. And also related, at the beginning of Wesley Bell's 2024 cycle, when he said that he was running for the U.S. Senate, he refiled a bunch of his campaign finance reports and essentially said that the folks that were doing them earlier had messed a bunch of them up and they needed to be refiled.
That's why you need a guy like Mike Sommer, right?
It's absolutely, yeah. He can be now. My favorite Mike Sommer anecdote.
Well, let me explain for those who don't know Mike Sommer. I know Mike Sommer not real well. I've served with him on, I guess, an executive kind of board thing for. He's like still like a big wig in the St. Charles County Salvation Army, and very good guy. I mean, wonderful guy, and is a CPA, and is one of these guys that does a ton of political committees, and he's very, very, very good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And his wife was Chrissy Sommer, who was a state rep from St. Charles.
Right.
Now, my favorite Mike Sommer anecdote is that when you would drive around the Westplex, Brad, you'd see giant signs that said, "Kids love summer." And I thought, if there's one guy that I hope is never charged with a crime involving minors, it's Mike Sommer.
I'm not going to touch that. Okay, it's time for us to take a break. Oh, my God. What are we doing here? Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?